If every grocery store closed tomorrow, the average American household would run out of food in 3 days. 3 days. That's not a theory. That's what emergency management agencies have consistently found when modeling civilian food security scenarios. But here's what those same agencies also know. Certain foods don't play by the rules of time. They don't rot. They don't spoil. They don't quietly die in the back of your pantry while you're busy living your life. Today, we're going through the 28 foods to stockpile that never expire, not because some label says so, but because the biology and chemistry literally cannot touch them. And I'm not giving you a vague list. Every single item on this list comes with the science of why it lasts, the storage method that actually matters, the mistake most people make, and where possible, the caloric numbers preppers actually calculate from. Here's something almost nobody mentions in these videos, and I want you to hold on to this idea throughout everything we cover today. The enemy of shelf-stable food is not time. Time is just the measurement. The real enemy is water activity. That's the amount of free, unbound water available in a food for microbes to use. Drop that number low enough, and bacteria, mold, and yeast simply cannot get started. Every food on this list wins because of water activity, not because of magic. And stick around for number 1. Because the food at the top of this list has been surviving in legal gray zones for centuries, and you probably already have it at home right now, stored completely wrong. Let's count down. Number 28. White rice. The 30-year pantry anchor. White rice is where every serious stockpile begins, and it earns that position. Not because it's exciting, but because sealed white rice has been confirmed viable in long-term food storage trials after 30 years or more. That's not marketing language. That's what happens when you remove nearly all moisture from a low-fat, low-oil grain and seal it away from oxygen. The reason brown rice does not make this list is important. Brown rice retains its bran layer, which is rich in natural oils. Those oils go rancid within 6 to 12 months at room temperature. White rice strips that layer away, removing the rancidity pathway entirely. Storage is straightforward but specific. Mylar bags with 2,000 cc oxygen absorbers bring the internal oxygen level below 0.1%, which prevents both oxidative spoilage and aerobic bacteria. Seal into food-grade buckets. Keep the temperature below 70 FIFO if possible. And here's a low-tech trick that still works. A handful of dried bay leaves tucked into each bag creates a natural insect deterrent that keeps bugs from finding a way in. The caloric math matters here too. A 25-pound bag of white rice contains approximately 45,000 calories. At 2,600 calories per day for one person, that's 17 days of food from one bag. That's the math preppers actually use. Rice handles bulk calories. Now let's talk about variety. Number 27. Dry pasta. 10-year comfort food. Dry pasta is one of those foods that earns its place by being quietly indestructible when handled right. Semolina wheat, the basis for most pasta, is dried during manufacturing to below 12% moisture content. That's below the spoilage threshold that mold and bacteria need to get started. The weak link in almost every home pasta supply is the cardboard box. Humidity penetrates it, insects love it, and the paper sleeve inside provides zero real protection. The moment you buy pasta, it should leave that box. Transfer it into airtight containers, vacuum-sealed bags, food-grade plastic bins, or even glass jars with oxygen absorbers, and you've just extended the shelf life from the 2 years on the box to 8 to 10 years minimum. 1 pound of dry pasta delivers approximately 1,600 calories. 10 pounds costs roughly $6 to $8, weighs almost nothing, and covers a week of primary carbohydrate needs for one adult. It also keeps morale alive when everything feels temporary. There's something fundamentally comforting about a bowl of pasta. Dinner is handled. Let's tackle breakfast. Number 26. Rolled oats. The breakfast that outlasts mortgages. Oats work while you're half asleep, which is exactly what you need when life gets difficult. What makes them exceptional for long-term storage is the combination of aggressive industrial drying. Here's a distinction most prepper videos skip. Steel-cut oats significantly outperform rolled oats for long-term storage. Rolled oats are steamed and pressed, which disrupts cell walls and exposes more surface area to oxygen. Steel-cut oats are simply cut from the whole groat, leaving more structural integrity intact. Stored in food-grade buckets with oxygen absorbers, steel-cut oats have shown viable nutrition and texture after 30 years in documented storage trials. Quick oats, on the other hand, are the shortest-lived variety. Avoid them for long-term stockpiling. And humidity is the absolute enemy here. One compromised lid can destroy an entire bucket's worth. Invest in proper bucket gaskets. One 50-pound bucket of oats holds over 85,000 calories. That's a serious breakfast fund. Now we step back into history. Number 25. Dried corn. The civilization crop. Long before refrigerators, before grocery stores, before supply chains, corn kept entire civilizations alive. That kind of staying power isn't an accident. It's chemistry. Whole dried corn kernels reach a natural moisture content of 12 to 13% after drying, which is below the spoilage activation threshold. Unlike cornmeal, which has been ground and therefore exposes enormous surface area to air and oxidation, whole kernels protect their interior with a tough outer hull. Cornmeal still works for storage, but expect a shelf life of 1 to 2 years compared to whole kernels' potential decade or more. Storage is simple. Mylar bags, oxygen absorbers, sealed food-grade buckets, and cool temperatures. What makes corn exceptional isn't just shelf life, it's the range of uses. Grind it into masa for tortillas, boil it whole, bake it, pop it, or ferment it. Very few pantry items pull this many different jobs. Civilizations ran on corn. Now let's talk about what soldiers ran on. Number 24. Hardtack. The military ration that outlived empires. Hardtack has a reputation that borders on mythology, and for good reason. It earned that reputation the hard way, by surviving conditions that destroyed everything else. The science is extreme simplicity. Hardtack is flour, water, and salt, baked until internal moisture drops below 3%. At that level, no biological process of any kind can occur. There is nothing for bacteria to metabolize. There is no fat to go rancid. The result is a food that, when kept sealed and dry, can last decades without any meaningful degradation. The mistake people make with hardtack is thickness. A thick biscuit takes longer to dry through during baking, leaving pockets of residual moisture inside that eventually allow mold. Thin, well-perforated biscuits dry through completely and last dramatically longer. You can bake your own with nothing more than flour, water, salt, and an oven. Roughly 100 calories per biscuit. Not glamorous. Absolutely reliable. Soak it in hot broth and it softens in minutes. Ugly? Yes. Functional? Completely. Hardtack is fuel. Now let's get to protein. Number 23. Dried beans. The protein vault. Dried beans look boring in a bag. In a real emergency, they are muscle food, caloric insurance, and one of the most cost-effective survival items in existence. Loaded with protein, fiber, and iron, and dried to below 15% moisture, they have essentially no spoilage pathway. Here's what most storage guides get wrong about old beans. People assume that if beans have been stored for 30 years, they're unsafe. They're not. They're stubborn. The older the bean, the more the proteins in the seed coat have denatured, which makes the skin tougher and requires longer cooking time. But the nutrition inside, the protein, the fiber, the minerals, remains intact. A pressure cooker solves the cooking time problem completely, cutting hours down to minutes even with very old beans. Store in Mylar bags with 2,000 cc oxygen absorbers inside food-grade 5-gallon buckets. Keep them off the floor. Concrete can transmit temperature fluctuations and moisture. At roughly 1,550 calories per pound and 30 cents per pound for bulk dry beans. Beans are slow to cook. This next one cooks fast. Number 22. Dried lentils. Fast protein for low fuel scenarios. If your emergency involves limited fuel, a generator running low, a propane tank almost empty, a wood supply getting thin, lentils become your best friend. Unlike beans, they require no soaking and cook fully in 20 to 25 minutes. That is a meaningful fuel savings when rationing energy. 1 cup of dry lentils expands to approximately 2.5 cups cooked. The protein content is solid, roughly 18 grams per cooked cup, along with fiber, iron, and folate. The reason lentils store so well is structural. Very low moisture content and nearly zero fat means no oxidative or microbial pathway exists. Red lentils cook the fastest. Green and brown lentils hold their shape better for soups. Store in Mylar, with oxygen absorbers just like beans, in food-grade buckets, cool and dark. At roughly 1,580 calories per pound, they pull comparable nutritional weight to beans with a dramatically faster prep time. Protein and carbs covered. Now let's handle morning nutrition. Number 21. Powdered milk. The 20-year breakfast rescuer. Nothing tests a household's morale faster than running out of dairy during a prolonged emergency. Powdered milk solves that quietly, and for years. The LDS Church, which has studied and practiced long-term food storage longer than almost any other institution in North America, has documented non-fat dry milk remaining nutritionally viable in sealed number 10 cans for 20 years or more. Here's a critical distinction that most lists get wrong. Whole milk powder contains fat. Fat oxidizes. Whole milk powder under ideal conditions lasts 2 to 5 years before the fat turns rancid. Non-fat dry milk has no fat to oxidize, and that single difference changes the shelf life equation entirely. For long-term storage, always choose non-fat. One 25-pound bag of non-fat dry milk reconstitutes to approximately 200 liters of liquid milk. That's significant dairy infrastructure from a single bag. Divide your supply into small airtight portions on opening. Each time you expose the bulk container to air, breakfast is covered. Now let's lock in ready-to-eat protein. Before we get to the next item, I need to stop and tell you something that changes how you look at every label in your pantry. The FDA does not require expiration dates on most shelf-stable packaged foods. What you see on the box, best by, use by, sell by, those are manufacturer quality estimates. They're liability shields. They're not safety deadlines. A best by date means the manufacturer believes the product is at peak quality until that date. It does not mean the product becomes unsafe the day after. The vast majority of foods on this list would be thrown away by households following package dates, perfectly good, safe, nutritious food going into landfills, because of a number a marketing team chose. Knowing this doesn't mean you ignore storage conditions. It means you trust the science of water activity and oxygen exclusion instead of the number on a box. Now let's continue. Number 20. Canned meat. The emergency protein cheat code. When the power is out and cooking capacity is limited, commercially canned meat is the closest thing to a biological cheat code. It's already cooked. It's already sealed. It's already been heat processed at temperatures sufficient to eliminate all living microorganisms inside the container. The real question with canned meat has never been the date. It's the seal. USDA guidance is clear. If a can shows no bulging, no rust, no seam damage, and no off odor upon opening, the contents are considered safe regardless of the best by date on the label. What compromises canned meat is physical seal failure, dense near seams, flood exposure, or corrosive rust penetrating the metal. A 12-can case of standard canned chicken, roughly 12.5 ounces per can, delivers approximately 3,000 calories of high-protein ready-to-eat food. Label every can with your purchase month using a permanent marker on both the top and the side. Rotate first in, first out. The oldest cans live at the front of the shelf and get used first. Protein covered. Now let's talk about cooking fat that actually lasts. Number 19. Ghee. Clarified butter that outlasts regular fat. Regular butter fails at room temperature because it contains water and milk solids. Leave it unrefrigerated for more than a few days, and you've created a bacterial science project. Ghee solves this by simmering butter until those water molecules and milk solid particles cook out, leaving behind almost pure butterfat. Traditional Indian households have stored ghee at room temperature for generations. This predates modern refrigeration by centuries. The science behind why it works is water activity. The removal of water and milk solids eliminates 2 of the 3 main spoilage pathways in dairy simultaneously. What remains is saturated fat with a water activity so low that bacteria have nothing to work with. At roughly 900 calories per 100 grams, ghee is one of the most calorically dense foods on this entire list. A single quart jar holds approximately 7,200 calories of pure cooking fat. The one rule that cannot be broken: only a completely dry spoon touches your stored ghee. Every water droplet introduced is a localized spoilage event. Store in sealed glass, not plastic, and keep it away from direct heat and light. Plant fat is next. Number 18. Coconut oil. The saturated fat survivor. What makes coconut oil exceptional for long-term storage is molecular. Approximately 92% of coconut oil's fat content is saturated fat. Saturated fats contain no double bonds in their carbon chains, and oxidation requires double bonds to attack. This is the molecular reason coconut oil resists the rancidity that destroys polyunsaturated seed oils. Compare that to sunflower oil, canola oil, or most heart-healthy seed oils, which are predominantly polyunsaturated and will go rancid in 1 to 2 years. If you store a gallon of vegetable oil for emergencies, you may open it after 18 months and find it smells like old paint. Coconut oil under the same conditions is typically still stable. Storage discipline is simple. Keep a small jar on the counter for daily use and leave the bulk sealed container untouched in a cool, dark cabinet below 76 degrees to keep it from repeatedly melting and re-solidifying, which can create texture changes, though not safety concerns. A 1-gallon jug holds approximately 30,000 calories of cooking fat. Plant fat done. Now the food that archaeologists have literally tasted from ancient tombs. Number 17. Raw honey. The 3,000-year-old survivor. Honey found in Tutankhamun's tomb, sealed for over 3,000 years, was confirmed by archaeologists to still be edible. That is the most extreme real-world proof of shelf life any food has ever provided. It's not a legend. It's documented history. The reason is water activity. Honey has a water activity of approximately 0.6. Most bacteria require a water activity of at least 0.91 to survive and reproduce. Honey is so far below that threshold that the environment is simply incompatible with microbial life. On top of that, honey has a natural pH between 3.2 and 4.5, strongly acidic, and raw honey contains glucose oxidase, an enzyme that produces small, continuous amounts of hydrogen peroxide. This is why crystallization is not a problem. Crystallization is a physical state change, glucose molecules aligning into a lattice structure, not a sign of spoilage. The honey is chemically identical. Warm the sealed jar in a bowl of warm water below 104 FIFO or 40 Celsius, and it will return to liquid without losing its enzymes. Never microwave it. High heat destroys the glucose oxidase that contributes to preservation. Store in a tightly sealed glass jar in a cool, dark location. Keep water out of the jar at all costs. A single wet spoon is the only thing that can compromise honey's indefinite shelf life. Over 200 published studies have documented honey's antimicrobial properties. This isn't folk medicine. It's peer-reviewed chemistry. Honey is the legend, but its chemical cousin is more affordable and just as eternal. Number 16. White sugar. The microbe desert. FEMA and multiple emergency management agencies around the world classify white sugar as indefinitely shelf-stable. Sugar is hygroscopic. It actively draws free water molecules out of its environment and binds them to its crystal structure. This creates a water activity near zero, which makes bacterial and fungal survival biologically impossible. At 1,800 calories per pound, white sugar is one of the highest caloric density dry foods you can stockpile. A 50-pound bag holds approximately 90,000 calories and costs roughly $20 at wholesale. That's an extraordinary caloric return on investment. The only failure mode is humidity-induced clumping, and clumping is not spoilage. Clumped sugar has simply absorbed ambient moisture and packed together. Break it up and it's chemically identical to the day it was packaged. Store in airtight food-grade buckets with a desiccant packet in humid climates. Keep it away from strong odors. Sugar absorbs surrounding scents over time. Sweet is covered. Let's go darker. Number 15. Pure maple syrup. The tree's immune system. Pure maple syrup, the real thing, not pancake syrup, protects itself through sugar concentration. The Brix measurement of pure maple syrup runs 66 to 68 degrees, meaning roughly 2/3 of the liquid by weight. At that concentration, water activity drops below the survival threshold for virtually all spoilage organisms. Pancake syrup is a completely different product. It's primarily corn syrup and artificial flavoring with stabilizers. Its storage profile is not the same, and it should not be treated as a substitute for pure maple syrup on a shelf-stable food list. Unopened bottles of pure maple syrup have been safely consumed years past their best-by labels with no safety consequence. Once opened, the risk is surface mold in a cool but not refrigerated environment. If mold appears on opened syrup, it is a surface-only contamination. Historical and current food preservation guidance agrees. Skim the mold, reheat the syrup to 180 FIFO or 82 skis. Skim again, wipe the rim clean and reseal. The syrup is safe and usable. A gallon jug of pure maple syrup holds approximately 8,800 calories of dense sugar energy. Now let's go to the darkest, most mineral-dense sweetener on this list. Number 14. Blackstrap molasses. The iron-rich underground sweetener. Blackstrap molasses comes from the third boil of sugarcane processing, which strips away much of the sucrose, but concentrates the minerals left behind, and concentrates them dramatically. We're talking about roughly 47 milligrams of iron per 100 grams. For comparison, ground beef delivers approximately 2.7 milligrams per 100 grams. Blackstrap molasses has more iron per gram than almost any food most households keep on hand. That mineral density, iron, calcium, magnesium, potassium, makes it a genuine nutritional asset in a survival pantry, not just a sweetener. For long-term food storage planning, this is the distinction that most lists overlook entirely. Blackstrap isn't just sugar insurance. The shelf life works through the same water activity principle as other sweeteners. The low water content and high mineral concentration create an environment inhospitable to microbial growth. Sealed in a glass bottle with the lid wiped clean before closing, so residual sugar doesn't trap moisture around the neck. It holds safely on a cool shelf for a decade or more. Now the oldest preserved mineral on Earth. Number 13. Salt. The eternal mineral. Salt does not age. It cannot age. The Wieliczka salt mine in Poland has been continuously mined since the 13th century, and the salt coming out today is geologically identical to salt extracted 700 years ago. That's not shelf life. That's geological permanence. The reason is basic chemistry. Salt, sodium chloride, is an inorganic mineral compound. It has no carbon-based molecular structure for bacteria to metabolize. It contains no fat to oxidize and no moisture of its own. There is simply nothing biological happening inside a crystal of salt, which means there is nothing for time to work on. Here's the storage detail most prepper guides miss. Iodized salt is inferior for deep storage. The potassium iodide added as a fortification agent oxidizes over time, causing the salt to take on slight yellow or pink discoloration. For multi-year or multi-decade storage, buy non-iodized salt or pickling salt specifically. The iodine in your diet can come from other sources. Store in 50-pound food-grade bags transferred to sealed buckets. Keep a pour-spout daily jar separate from the bulk supply. Never introduce wet hands or utensils into your stored salt. Beyond flavor, salt is your preservation multiplier. It's the tool that cures meat, preserves vegetables, and makes fermentation possible. Its caloric value is zero. Its functional value is essentially incalculable. Salt preserves everything else. This next item preserves itself. Every prepper video tells you to store food cool and dark. Almost none of them give you the number that actually matters. Here it is. Every 10 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 5.5 degrees Celsius, rise in storage temperature roughly halves the shelf life of most organic foods. That means a pantry running at 80 FIFO doesn't just age your food a little faster. It ages it at roughly 4 times the speed of a pantry held at 60 FIFO. 70 FIFO 21 SUD is acceptable for most of what we've covered. 60 FIFO 15 ZF. 50 FE 10 skrs is exceptional and will add years to everything in this list. A basement, a root cellar, or even a north-facing interior closet on the ground floor naturally runs cooler than a kitchen or garage pantry. That single environmental choice is worth more than any fancy container upgrade. Now back to the list. Number 12. Bouillon cubes. Flavor batteries in a foil shell. Bouillon cubes work because they are, at their chemical core, concentrated salt with dehydrated flavoring agents. The salt content in a standard bouillon cube runs between 40 and 50% by weight, and at that concentration the water activity inside each cube is suppressed to a level where microbial life simply cannot function. Most people assume the foil wrapper is doing the preservation work. It isn't. The salt is. The foil wrapper is protecting against moisture intrusion from the environment, not doing any internal preservation. That distinction matters because it means you can remove bouillon cubes from their foil packaging and store them in sealed glass jars with a desiccant packet. Each cube weighs 4 to 5 grams and transforms 1 to 2 cups of plain water into flavored broth in seconds. Calorie content is negligible, usually under 10 calories per cube, but the psychological value of hot savory broth when everything else feels cold and uncertain. Flavor is covered. Now the pre-preserved liquid that's been protecting itself for centuries. Number 11. Soy sauce. The fermented flavor fortress. Traditional Japanese tamari, the ancestor of modern soy sauce, has a fermentation history that predates written Japanese records. Over 1,000 years of continuous production. The reason it survives is that fermentation itself is a preservation process. The bacteria and yeast involved produce both lactic acid and ethanol. Add to that a sodium chloride content of 15 to 18% in most commercial soy sauces, and you have a double preservation mechanism. Here's a critical point for long-term storage planning. Low-sodium soy sauce has a significantly shorter shelf life. The reduced sodium removes one of the two primary preservation mechanisms. If you're building a long-term supply, buy regular soy sauce. After opening, keep the cap tight and store in a cool, dark cabinet. Air exposure gradually dulls the umami depth. The glutamate compounds slowly oxidize with prolonged contact with oxygen. But sealed and kept from direct light, an unopened bottle of soy sauce can sit safely for several years beyond its labeled date. Liquids handled. Now spice. Number 10. Whole peppercorns. The shell-protected spice vault. Medieval European traders valued black pepper so highly it was used as a form of currency, stored in castle vaults alongside gold and silver. That wasn't irrational. Whole peppercorns held their potency for years under the right conditions, making them a genuinely valuable traded commodity. The science behind their longevity is the pericarp, the tough outer shell of the peppercorn. This shell acts as a physical oxygen barrier around the volatile essential oils and piperine compounds inside. The moment you grind a peppercorn, that barrier is destroyed. Those aromatic compounds, terpenes, piperine, and dozens of minor volatile molecules, begin oxidizing immediately. Pre-ground pepper loses most of its active potency within weeks. Properly stored whole peppercorns in a sealed glass jar maintain full potency for 3 to 5 years. Under the same storage conditions, pre-ground pepper is essentially spent within 6 months. The fix is a hand grinder, $15 or less, and the habit of grinding per meal. That habit alone keeps your spice supply dramatically more effective over time. Pepper sealed. Now herbs. Number 9. Dried herbs. Flavor preserved, safety indefinite. Here's a distinction that matters and almost no storage guide makes. Dried herbs do not expire in a safety sense. They lose potency. An old jar of dried oregano from 5 years ago won't make you sick, it just won't taste like much. The biological safety never disappears because low moisture content prevents any microbial growth permanently. What does degrade over time is the volatile oil content, the aromatic compounds that give herbs their flavor and many of their health properties. Those oils evaporate slowly through container walls, especially plastic, and oxidize when exposed to air and light. This is a quality issue, not a safety issue. The key insight here is that powdered herbs lose potency 2 to 3 times faster than whole or leaf forms. Processing breaks down cell walls, releasing the volatile oils into the air during and after grinding. Whole dried leaves, by contrast, maintain intact cell structure that keeps the oils locked inside until you crush them. Buy whole leaf dried herbs where possible. Store in sealed glass jars, not plastic, away from the stove. Crush the leaves between your fingers just before adding to food to release the oils immediately before they can escape. Properly sealed whole dried herbs retain at least 50% of their original volatile oil content for 3 to 5 years. Herbs done. Now the liquid that never dies. Number 8. Distilled white vinegar. The acid that never quits. The FDA classifies distilled white vinegar as having an indefinite shelf life. That classification exists because a 5% acetic acid solution maintains a pH between 2.4 and 3.4. E. coli, salmonella, listeria, none of them can operate in that environment. Here's a detail that confuses people. Sediment sometimes appears in stored distilled white vinegar. That sediment is not contamination. It's harmless mineral precipitation, dissolved minerals from the water used in production, slowly crystallizing out of solution over time. The vinegar is safe, effective, and chemically unchanged. Storage is simple. Upright sealed, cool, and dark. Keep it away from the stove. Buy in gallon jugs, at $3 to $4 each. A gallon of distilled white vinegar serves triple-duty food preservation agent for home pickling, surface disinfectant with documented antimicrobial efficacy, and cooking acid that enhances and balances flavor in almost any dish. Now it's live culture cousin. Number 7. Apple cider vinegar with mother. The living acid. The cloudy culture floating inside unfiltered apple cider vinegar is called the mother, and it's actually a SCOBY, a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. The same class of culture that makes kombucha, sourdough, and fermented foods work. Its presence doesn't mean the vinegar is going bad. It means the vinegar is biologically active. What that culture does is create a self-reinforcing preservation environment. The bacteria continuously produce acetic acid as long as any residual alcohol is available, maintaining the acidity that keeps the environment hostile to pathogenic organisms. It's a living biological defense system. One important storage detail: glass only. Acetic acid slowly interacts with certain types of plastic over extended storage periods, potentially leaching compounds into the liquid. For a food you're planning to store for years, the container material matters. Glass is chemically inert. Properly stored, an unopened bottle of raw apple cider vinegar with mother has a documented shelf life of 5 years at minimum. Some people have maintained the same mother culture for a decade or more by topping off the bottle as they use it. Active preservation done. Now, flavor investment. Before we close out this list, there's something that separates people who actually use their stockpile from people who just own one. It's the rotation system. And it takes about 30 seconds to implement but saves hundreds of dollars in wasted food over time. It's called first in, first out FIFO. The principle is simple. Oldest items always face the front of the shelf and get used first. When you bring new stock home, it goes to the back. The stuff already there moves forward. The habit that makes this work is marking every container with the purchase month and year using a permanent marker on the top lid and on the side so you can read it from either direction when items are stacked. It takes 5 seconds per container and makes rotation completely automatic. You never have to remember what's oldest. You just read the front item. This system means food in your stockpile never actually expires unused because it's always cycling through. The people who build stockpiles and come back years later to find everything expired, they didn't use FIFO. Now the final 5. Number 6. Pure vanilla extract. The alcohol-protected flavor investment. Pure vanilla extract, the real thing, with 35% or more alcohol content, is classified by the FDA in a category that puts it adjacent to spirits. And that classification reflects a real chemical reality. Ethanol at 35% concentration denatures the protein structure of spoilage bacteria and inhibits the enzymatic activity that causes organic degradation. It's not just flavoring. It's a permanently preserved liquid. But here's what makes pure vanilla extract genuinely interesting from a storage perspective. The flavor actually improves over time. The alcohol serves as a solvent that continues to extract and interact with the vanillin compounds from the bean material. Additionally, slow esterification, a chemical reaction between alcohols and acids, develops more complex aromatic compounds over years. A 10-year-old bottle of pure vanilla extract, stored correctly, is arguably better than a new one. The storage rule is dark glass and sealed cabinet. Ultraviolet light degrades vanillin molecules directly. Clear glass bottles on a sunny counter are destroying the flavor in real time. Imitation vanilla extract, which contains synthetic vanillin and no alcohol, begins fading in 2 to 4 years. They are completely different products with completely different longevity profiles. A 4-ounce bottle of pure vanilla extract contains the flavor extraction from approximately 13 vanilla beans. That's a long-term flavor infrastructure investment that pays compound interest the longer you store it. Kitchen chemistry next. Number 5. Baking soda. The geological kitchen staple. Baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, is not manufactured the way most foods are. It's mined. Specifically, it comes from trona ore deposits formed from ancient evaporated lake beds that crystallized over millions of years. It is, at its origin, a geological mineral. And that origin is exactly why nothing biological can break it down. Bacteria need organic carbon compounds to metabolize. Sodium bicarbonate provides none. There's no fat to oxidize, no moisture of its own, no protein structure to degrade. From a microbial perspective, baking soda is a completely inert landscape. What does happen slowly in open storage is partial reaction with atmospheric CO2 and humidity, which causes gradual loss of leavening power. The baking soda is not unsafe, it just raises bread a little less vigorously. You can test it by dropping a teaspoon into hot water or vinegar. Active vigorous bubbling means it's still effective. Stored sealed in airtight containers away from vinegar and heat, a 12-pound bag costing $6 to $8 stays fully functional for over 10 years. It also works as a mild abrasive cleaner, a deodorizer, and a dental cleaning agent. Few pantry items carry this many simultaneous uses. One more powder. Number 4. Cornstarch. The one rule powder. Cornstarch has one survival rule: stay dry. When moisture stays out, nothing can touch it. Cornstarch is a pure long-chain polysaccharide, a starch molecule, and in its dry crystalline form it provides no free water for microbes to use and no organic energy pathway that bacteria can access easily. The result is a shelf life measured not in months but in years and potentially decades when properly contained. The mistake that kills cornstarch supplies is leaving it in the original cardboard box. Cardboard is porous and hygroscopic, it absorbs ambient kitchen humidity and transfers it directly to the contents. In a kitchen environment with steam from cooking, dishwashers running, and temperature fluctuations, a cardboard box is not a moisture barrier. It's a moisture sponge. Transfer immediately on purchase to a sealed glass or food-grade plastic container. Keep it far from the dishwasher, the sink, and the stove. Set it in a cool, dry cabinet and don't touch it. Shelf life when properly sealed is documented at 10 years or more. Morning routine next. Number 3. Instant coffee. Caffeine insurance for the long haul. Morning routines don't disappear during emergencies. If anything, they become more important, because routine is one of the things that keeps people psychologically grounded when everything else feels uncertain. Instant coffee earns its place on this list because of what the dehydration process actually does at a molecular level. The freeze-drying process removes over 98% of moisture while preserving volatile aromatic compounds in a stable crystalline matrix. Caffeine itself, an alkaloid, is a chemically stable molecule that does not meaningfully degrade under normal storage temperature and oxygen conditions. What kills instant coffee storage is oxygen, not heat. The moment you open a vacuum-sealed tin and introduce atmospheric oxygen, the aromatic oxidation clock starts. For long-term storage, buy in large vacuum-sealed tins. Once opened, transfer to an airtight glass jar and use within 6 months for peak flavor, though the caffeine and basic utility remain well beyond that. A teaspoon of instant coffee delivers approximately 63 milligrams of caffeine, a predictable, consistent dose. That predictability becomes genuinely valuable when you're rationing your last few tins. Caffeine covered. Let's talk chocolate. Number 2. 70% plus dark chocolate. The rugged morale food. The ancient Mesoamerican civilizations, Olmec, Maya, Aztec, stored cacao as currency. Dried cacao beans have been recovered from archaeological context dating back over 1,000 years. The connection between cacao and value wasn't just cultural. It was practical. Properly dried cacao kept. It traveled. It lasted. Modern 70% plus dark chocolate carries forward that same durability. At that cocoa percentage, the water activity of the finished product drops below 0.65, well below the microbial survival threshold. The fat in dark chocolate is primarily cocoa butter, which is a saturated fat with the same oxidation resistance we discussed with coconut oil and ghee. No double bonds. No easy oxidation pathway. Milk chocolate and white chocolate are categorically different products. Both contain added dairy fat and milk solids, which dramatically accelerate oxidative rancidity. They are not substitutes for dark chocolate in a long-term storage context. Food storage testing from commercial confectionery manufacturers shows 70% plus dark chocolate retaining quality. Bloom, the white or gray surface discoloration caused by fat or sugar migration, is a purely aesthetic concern. It does not indicate spoilage, does not affect flavor significantly, and does not affect safety at all. At roughly 600 calories per 100 grams, and containing theobromine, a longer-lasting, gentler stimulant than caffeine. When stress peaks, one square does more sustained work than most survival foods twice its size. Morale handled. Number 1. Number 1. Popcorn kernels. The armored grain nobody expects. This is the one most people didn't see coming. Not hard liquor. Not honey. Popcorn kernels. Here's why this earns the top position. Popcorn kernels are not just shelf-stable, they are biologically engineered to self-regulate their internal conditions. The kernel's outer hull, called the pericarp, is one of the most effective natural moisture barriers in the plant kingdom. It evolved specifically to maintain the precise 14% internal moisture level. That same tough moisture-regulating shell also protects the interior from external humidity, oxygen, and contamination simultaneously. Most people think the big colorful popcorn bags at grocery stores are the storage solution. They're not. That bag is the weak point. The packaging is porous, poorly sealed for long-term storage, and surrounded by flavored oils and seasonings that go rancid. The kernel itself, liberated from that packaging and sealed in a glass mason jar with a silica desiccant packet. And here's the efficiency metric that makes popcorn genuinely remarkable for emergency caloric planning. 1 cup of popcorn kernels produces approximately 32 cups of popped popcorn. At roughly 500 calories per cup of kernels, the volume-to-calorie expansion ratio is one of the highest of any food on this list. 1 sealed gallon jar of kernels produces over 100 cups of popped corn. That stretches food supply and morale simultaneously. Store away from heat. Elevated temperatures accelerate moisture loss from the kernel, reducing pop rate over time. Cool, dark sealed glass. Simple as that. You just covered 28 foods. And if there's one idea that ties every single one of them together, from honey that outlasted Egyptian pharaohs to popcorn kernels with their self-regulating moisture shells, it was water activity. Drop the free water low enough, and biology simply cannot get started. That's the principle behind every item on this list. Sealed, cool, dry, and dark. That 4-word rule applies universally across every category we covered, from grains and legumes to fats, acids, minerals, and chocolate. Here's what to do right now. Not someday, right now, with this information. First, audit your pantry this week using the seal condition as the standard rather than the best by date. Anything in compromised packaging gets transferred to glass or food-grade airtight containers. Second, pick 5 items from this list that you don't currently have in your home and add them to your next grocery run. Not 30 items. 5. Depth before breadth. Third, implement FIFO starting today. Grab a marker. Label every sealed container with the month and year. Move the oldest to the front. That's it. 3 actions this week, and your household food security looks fundamentally different. One last thing before you go. If you found anything in this video that surprised you, a food you didn't expect to last, a storage detail you'd never heard, or a Best Buy myth that changed how you'll look at your pantry, I want to know. Drop a yes in the comments right now. That's it. 1 word. It tells me this content is hitting, and it helps this video reach people who genuinely need it. And if you're serious about building a real survival pantry, not just a shelf of beans and rice, but a smart, rotating, calorie-calculated food system, the next video goes deep on canned foods. Specifically, which ones are worth every dollar, which ones waste your money and your shelf space, and the single type of canned food that most people stockpile first and should actually stockpile last. You don't want to miss that one. Subscribe if you haven't, because that video is coming shortly, and this is the kind of content the algorithm doesn't always surface twice. See you in the next one.